Pause right here before you keep scrolling. If these words landed in front of you today, chances are it wasn't just random chance or another blip in your feed. There's a good possibility that some part of you has been quietly searching for exactly this, and somehow it found you anyway. So stay with me a moment longer. I want you to picture someone specific right now. Let their face settle clearly in your mind. Notice what stirs inside you the instant they appear. That quiet tug at your chest. That strange blend of warmth, ache, and something you can't quite put into words. That feeling isn't confusion, it's your heart recognizing something your logical mind hasn't caught up to yet. Because this isn't just someone who happened to wander into your world. Somewhere underneath the surface, there's a sense of familiarity with them that you can't fully explain. I understand how draining it is to hold on to a love this strong, while everything around it stays uncertain. The sleepless nights spent turning these feelings over in silence, wondering if you're reading too much into small signs, wondering if any of it will ever amount to something real. It matters more than you think. You're not being naive. You're not overreacting or being too much. You're simply someone in the middle of something that has the potential to reshape your life. And that's precisely why it feels so hard right now. What makes connections like this so intense is that they don't stay on the surface. They dig straight into the parts of ourselves we've spent years learning to guard, bury, or control. Most people assume love is supposed to feel like relief, like finally reaching still water after years of treading through chaos. But the relationships that actually change us tend to arrive more like a storm that clears the air before bringing calm. They loosen everything we've buried under old defense mechanisms, pride, fear, and pure survival instinct. In the beginning, that unraveling rarely feels like healing. It feels like collapse. When someone manages to reach the parts of you no one else ever could, your usual coping strategies stop functioning the way they used to. The person who's used to overgiving suddenly notices how tired they are from constantly proving they're worth staying for. They begin to question why they ever believed love had to be earned through endless patience and self-sacrifice. That realization stings because it means admitting they were taught, somewhere along the way, that love was something to work for instead of something they were always entitled to just by being themselves. At the same time, the other person is often wrestling with an entirely different fear. Maybe they learned to survive by keeping people at arm's length. Closeness for them got wired to old wounds, heartbreak, betrayal, disappointment. Their nervous system learned to treat real intimacy like danger. So when they pull back, it's not because the connection doesn't matter, it's because it matters too much. And that intensity feels impossible to manage. From the outside, it can look like one person is chasing while the other keeps retreating, overwhelmed. But underneath, it's usually two people carrying wounds shaped by the exact same fear. The fear of not being enough, of being rejected once they're truly seen. The one who chases often believes love will vanish the second they stop trying, which is why silence feels unbearable to them. But they need to understand that losing themselves is too steep a price for any relationship. Their worth was never something to be measured in how much heartache they could tolerate, how long they could wait around, or how much of themselves they could sacrifice just to keep someone nearby. Meanwhile, the one who withdraws is often carrying the opposite kind of wound. Somewhere inside, there's a belief that getting too close to someone means eventually losing themselves, letting the other person down, or feeling trapped. So the moment things start to feel genuine, they instinctively create space. But that distance rarely gives them the relief they're hoping for. Instead, it usually brings guilt, confusion, isolation, and an even sharper awareness of how much they actually care. Avoiding vulnerability might shield them from rejection in the short term, but it also blocks them from receiving the very love they're quietly craving. Healing almost never looks graceful while it's happening. Sometimes it shows up as confusion, sometimes as inconsistency, fear, emotional shutdowns, or long stretches of silence while someone tries to make sense of what's happening inside them. Growth tends to look chaotic long before it starts looking wise. Think about a caterpillar. It doesn't gently morph into a butterfly. It completely breaks down inside the cocoon before it becomes something new. Transformation has always demanded some kind of ending first. Not a literal one, but the ending of old identities, old defenses, old beliefs that simply can't survive inside something deeper. That's exactly why these connections can feel so overwhelming sometimes. They expose the contradictions living inside us. They show us how badly we want closeness, while simultaneously revealing how terrified we are of it. They force us to finally see the difference between attachment and real love. Attachment says, "Don't leave, because I need you to fill what's missing in me." Real love, eventually, says something different. "I want to know you fully, and I also want to stay whole within myself while I do." That shift changes everything. But there's a piece of this journey that so many people miss entirely. In almost every connection like this, there's a turning point, a moment where everything either deepens or falls apart, depending on what each person chooses to do with what they've uncovered about themselves. And it almost never shows up through some big dramatic moment or a conversation you've been rehearsing in your head for months. It doesn't happen because they finally say the exact words you've been aching to hear. It happens because of something quieter, a decision you make on your own, inside yourself. The decision to stop waiting around to be picked and start choosing yourself instead. The moment that shift happens, something in the whole dynamic starts to move. Not because love runs on magic, but because the energy you bring into a connection actually shapes it. When you stop reaching for someone out of fear or desperation or need, you stop being the thing they instinctively want to pull away from. Maybe for the first time, they're left alone with what they actually feel about you. Not what scares them, not what they've been avoiding, not what they've been using distraction to dodge, but what's genuinely there. And what's there may never have left in the first place. I need you to trust something. Every bit of what you've lived through during this waiting period has meant something. All of it. None of it was wasted. I know it hasn't always felt that way. There are moments you look back at everything you gave and wonder if it just disappeared into nothing, if it ever reached the person it was meant for, if any of it was worth what it cost you. But love doesn't just vanish. It doesn't dissolve into thin air. Every quiet night spent thinking about someone who wasn't there, every evening you fell asleep holding feelings you never said out loud, all of that shaped you, even in ways you might not see yet. That love is still real. It's still deepening you, still building your capacity to hold something extraordinary, whenever it actually arrives. When something that feels this right also brings you to tears, that's not weakness. It's not proof that you're fragile. Those tears usually come from a heart that refuses to let go of something it knows matters. That's loyalty. That's emotional courage, the kind most people don't have the patience for. A lot of people go looking for a reason to walk away the second things get uncertain. They put up walls before anyone else gets the chance to hurt them. You could have done that too. You could have told yourself loving this hard was just a liability not worth carrying. And yet here you are, still feeling, still caring, still holding on to hope, even on the days you're worn out. That says something about you. Not that endless waiting is always the right move, but that your ability to love has survived things that would have made a lot of people shut down completely. That's rare. Here's something true that's easy to forget. Real transformation almost always happens before two people actually come together. Sometimes a connection's biggest purpose isn't reunion, it's growth. Sometimes it exists to teach you self-respect, emotional steadiness, boundaries, and how to hold on to your own worth, no matter what someone else decides to do. None of that feels rewarding while you're in the middle of learning it, but it becomes priceless later. And maybe that's exactly what this whole chapter has been teaching you. Not how to chase harder, not how to wait longer, not how to make yourself more appealing, but how to come back home to yourself. How to stop letting someone else's availability decide your worth. How to understand that your own heart deserves your care first, before it goes looking for anyone else's. Because the strongest kind of love was never built on fear. It doesn't survive on anxiety or uncertainty or constant self-sacrifice. Real love grows between two people who are learning to stand on their own 2 feet, while still choosing each other anyway. It grows when both people stop running from who they are. It grows when honesty starts to feel safer than avoidance, and being vulnerable starts to feel stronger than staying guarded. Whatever happens next, don't sell short how much you've already grown through this. The person you were before this connection isn't the same person reading this right now. Your awareness has widened. Your heart has stretched. Your understanding of yourself runs deeper and holds more nuance than it used to. Even the painful parts have taught you something real about what actually matters to you. And if there's one thing worth holding on to, let it be this. The love you carry should never ask you to abandon yourself. The connection meant to actually last in your life won't ask you to shrink, to go quiet, or to feel like less in order to keep it. It'll ask you to become more fully who you already are. It'll encourage growth instead of self-erasure. It'll support authenticity instead of constant striving. So as you move forward, hold on to this. Keep caring if your heart still wants to care. Keep hoping if hope still feels genuine. But don't put your whole life on pause waiting for someone else to hand you certainty. Keep growing. Keep evolving. Keep choosing yourself every day. Because the moment you actually start doing that, everything begins to look different. And sometimes, once you stop chasing the thing you're afraid of losing, you realize what's actually meant for you has been making its way toward you the entire time. A lot of people get hurt or wait so long that they eventually go quiet and shut themselves off, because the emotional toll starts to feel like too much. You had every reason to make that same choice. Honestly, no one would have blamed you for it. It would have made complete sense. But you took a different path. You stayed open when closing off would have been the easier option. You stayed soft when hardening yourself was right there for the taking. In a world that so often rewards emotional distance, choosing not to detach isn't weakness, it's genuine strength. It's a kind of courage a lot of people never build, because they stop trusting people before they even get the chance to be hurt. Loving deeply without keeping score of what you'll get back is rare. That kind of love ends up being the actual foundation that lasting relationships get built on. You chose to keep feeling, keep caring, keep your heart in the game, even when every circumstance seemed to be handing you a reason to leave. That matters more than you know. Caring about someone through confusion, through distance, through stretches where nothing feels certain and the silence seems to go on forever, and doing all of that without turning bitter, takes something rare. You can't fake that. You can't learn it from a book or pick it up by watching other people do it. It comes from somewhere inside a person. Either you have that capacity or you don't. You do. That's not some minor detail about your personality. It might be one of the most defining things about who you are. And that exact quality is what's leading you towards something real, not toward a relationship that leaves you constantly unsettled. Not toward a connection where you're stuck decoding mixed signals and reading between the lines forever. You're not walking toward a future where you're always wondering where you stand, or a love that keeps you braced for whatever uncertainty comes next, or a situation where your emotions feel too big for the space you're given to feel them in. Instead, you're moving towards something that actually fits, something that doesn't ask you to shrink or dim any part of who you are. A connection that feels easy instead of draining. A love that feels like finally exhaling after holding your breath for way too long. That's not just a nice image. It's a real possibility. But it depends on something. It depends on what you choose to do from here. So what does that look like in practice? What do you actually do today, tomorrow, and in the days after that? The answer is simple and genuinely hard at the same time. I won't pretend it's easier than it is. You deliberately turn your attention back toward yourself. Not as a performance, not as some strategy to make someone miss you, not as a way to send a message or trigger a reaction, not to prove anything to anyone. You genuinely start bringing your energy back home. You take the emotional investment that's been flowing outward and start putting some of it back into your own life. You start asking yourself a question you probably haven't asked honestly in a long time. What do I actually need right now? Not what do they need. Not what could I do differently. Not what would make them finally understand. Not what would bring them back or get them to open up. What do you need? What would genuinely feel good to you today? What parts of your own life have been quietly waiting for your attention while your focus stayed locked on something uncertain and just out of reach? You start filling those gaps back in. You start saying yes to yourself with even a fraction of the energy you've poured into everyone else. The plans you put off because you were waiting for life to feel more settled, you start picking them back up. The experiences you postponed because your heart was elsewhere, you start letting yourself have them. The friendships that faded into the background while your attention was somewhere else, you start reaching back out. The parts of yourself you set aside and forgot about, you bring them back into the light. None of this means pretending the love disappeared. It doesn't mean denying what you feel or forcing yourself to stop caring or convincing yourself something real actually meant nothing. This is just about widening your life again, making sure your whole world isn't built around one person and one possible outcome. Remembering that your life is bigger than any single story. And once you actually start doing this, something quiet begins to shift. It's not dramatic. It rarely happens overnight, and most people don't even notice it right away. But it's real. You stop feeling like a sentence someone else needs to finish. You stop feeling like your life is stuck in a waiting room. You stop believing everything meaningful has to be on hold until one particular thing resolves itself. Instead, you start feeling whole again. You start feeling like someone whose life has purpose and color and momentum, regardless of what any one relationship is doing. You start feeling anchored in your own life instead of hanging on someone else's uncertainty. And that groundedness changes how you show up. People notice it, even if they can't quite name what changed. There's something unmistakable about someone who actually feels at home in themselves. It creates quiet confidence. It creates real calm. It creates a kind of pull that can't be faked or manufactured. Genuine magnetism doesn't chase, it draws people in. And the person you've been loving through all of this will notice that shift too, probably before anyone else does. They'll feel it. This isn't a technique designed to force a certain outcome. I want to be clear. The last thing you need is another strategy aimed at controlling someone else's feelings. This has nothing to do with manipulation. It's simply what naturally happens when someone stops relating from a place of lack and starts relating from a place of fullness. The whole dynamic shifts. The connection breathes differently. And space opens up for something honest to exist that couldn't have existed before. Now, there's something else important to understand. They aren't the villain in this story. I know there have probably been moments where the pain made it tempting to paint them that way. Moments when their silence, unpredictability, distance or confusion made it easier to build a narrative with a clear victim and a clear wrongdoer. But people rarely fit into boxes that neatly. They aren't cold, they aren't indifferent. What you've been reading as distance is often something far more layered than it appears. Many people learned, long before they ever crossed paths with you, that love wasn't safe. Somewhere in their history, closeness got tangled up with pain, disappointment, loss, or emotional overwhelm. Love started to feel costly, like something that demanded more than they believed they had the capacity to give. They didn't choose that belief deliberately. Nobody does. It gets embedded through experiences that shape a person long before they even have the vocabulary to name what's happening to them. It becomes a built-in defense mechanism. So what reads as withdrawal is often just someone quietly wrestling with a fear that's been present for years. They think of you in the quiet gaps between distractions, in those moments when there's no more noise left to drown out what they actually feel, and you're still there in their mind. They notice your absence even during stretches when they were the one who created that gap. There's a tension inside them connected to you that doesn't just fade because contact decreases, because what they're feeling isn't really about physical proximity. It's tied to something unresolved they haven't fully processed yet, and that unfinished work isn't yours to carry. You can't do it on their behalf. No matter how clearly you can see what they need, no matter how much love you have to give, no matter how badly you want to walk them through it, that journey belongs entirely to them. The most powerful thing within your control is refusing to let their unresolved fear determine your worth. Refusing to treat their unhealed wounds as proof that something is missing in you. Their struggle is theirs, their healing is theirs, and your value stays fully intact, regardless of where they currently stand in that process. Carry yourself with genuine dignity and steady self-respect, so that when they eventually work through whatever has been holding them back, what greets them is you at your absolute best. Not worn down by the waiting, not hollowed out by longing, not chasing validation you should have been giving yourself the entire time. Instead, they find someone standing solidly in their own light, grounded, whole, and genuinely ready for what's next. Close your eyes for a moment and picture a morning that might be closer than you think. You wake up, and the first thing you notice is that the heaviness is gone. That specific weight that's lived in your chest for so long you'd nearly forgotten it was there. That familiar pressure, that quiet ache underneath everything, vanished. Not because your feelings disappeared, not because you stopped caring about this person, not because you forced emotional distance or talked yourself out of loving them. None of that happened. The weight lifted because the love finally has somewhere to land, because what once felt unfinished has finally resolved, because the thing that always seemed to live somewhere out in the future has finally arrived in the present. It's no longer something you're anticipating, it's simply your reality now. Picture turning toward this person and actually looking at them, really seeing their face and noticing something there that either wasn't present before or has been missing for a long time. There's no more hesitation, no conflict lingering behind their eyes. None of that familiar look of someone physically there, but emotionally holding back. Instead, you see peace. Not an intense or overwhelming peace, a quiet, settled kind. The kind that belongs to someone who has made their decision fully and stopped second-guessing it. Someone who isn't managing their emotions carefully, isn't keeping something in reserve, isn't leaving one foot out the door, just someone who is completely, entirely present with you. Imagine what it would feel like to experience love that no longer haunts your thoughts at 2 in the morning as a source of anxiety. Love that doesn't keep you awake replaying conversations, hunting for hidden meaning, wondering what you missed or what you could have done differently. Imagine a love that finally gives your nervous system permission to rest. A love where you're not constantly scanning for warning signs. A love where you're not bracing yourself for disappointment before it even happens. A love where uncertainty no longer sits quietly beside you, day after day.